Hi there, I'm Stephen Durkin. Welcome to Leading Conversations. We're at our various AusIMM conferences around the country, connecting with leaders of our industry to hear their perspective about our industry and where our industry is going. It's my great pleasure to welcome Geoff Deans to Leading Conversations. Geoff, the founder and director of an organisation called Modifying Factors, which is probably a good place to start because I think that really captures the essence of, from a leadership point of view, what you're most passionate about and kind of what it is that you feel that you want to make a contribution in our industry around.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Look, so Modifying Factors, what do we do? Well, we help people navigate the complexities of project development to make them happen. The resources sector has got a long-standing history of the term modifying factors. It's embedded in the JORC code and lots of other things that go with it. So they're all the things that projects need to be true for projects: mineralogy, geology, all the technical basis, approvals, land access. So the easiest way to say it is that it's anything that can impact or affect project performance, viability, investability, or any regulatory pieces that go with it, and stakeholder acceptance. Sorry.
And typically the clients that kind of you're dealing with, just sort of, can you categorise kind of those clients? Are they mining companies? Are they individuals? Are they geologists? Kind of tell us a bit about your client.
Yeah, fantastic question. So mining companies, being involved in tier one contracts, doing tier one companies doing strategic reviews. So part of it is helping them make sense of how all the pieces are currently fitting together and what that could look like. Work with numerous explorers, work with OEMs around some of their tenders, work with industry associations, and work with suppliers as well. So the full gamut, because all the factors are uniform for everybody, but people care about them for different reasons. So depending on the situation, the context and their needs, and what the project outcomes are, we can help them conform those into something that makes sense.
And if you were to kind of categorise kind of, modifying factors, like kind of, are they predominantly technical or social, or would you categorise them a different way to that?
So excellent question. So water is a modifying factor for any project.
I see, yep.
And so it has a technical orientation, and you get the water, has an environmental connotation, has a social connotation, has a regulatory connotation. So if you can understand what the project's needs are for water, what the risk is around getting that water, how they're going to get it approved, how they're going to use it, how they're going to discharge it, it really de-risks the project. Whereas if you look at water usage or a technical orientation to something, it can end up, painting yourself into a corner sometimes.
Energy, is that like a...
Energy is a huge one. So,
I imagine,
and the linear infrastructure that enables energy, tailings, waste, all of those things that can impact project design and performance.
Do you think there's enough consideration of, very specific question, do you think there's enough consideration of kind of energy as then a modifying factor in industry? Because it's certainly... the deployment of energy in, say, manufacturing in Germany led to the renaissance of that sector there 20, 30 years ago. Do you think we sort of spend enough time sort of reflecting on kind of that energy mix as it relates to the mining industry?
I think we are now. It's certainly top of mind, and we're here at the Critical Minerals Conference, and energy's certainly been a high-level topic. 10 years ago, there was safe, stable energy. Now, with the transition, enabling infrastructure, carbon reduction behind and in front of the meter power is really a challenge for everybody. And it's a operational cost, but also when you talk about regulation, land access, social performance, power transmission lines and linear infrastructure are pretty high order conversations across lots of sectors at the moment.
Now, knowing a bit about kind of your background, I assumed you were a geologist, but I found out, horrified to find out today you're not a geologist. Where's kind of, just tell us, I know your career pathway has not necessarily been linear. I want to get into that in a moment, but just sort of tell us about kind of where that started in terms of sort of your introduction to the industry.
So the industry found me. I was living and working in Alice Springs working for a university, and so as part of that role I was working with Aboriginal corporations, mining companies, exploration companies, the pastoral sectors.
In terms of community connection?
Yeah, so it was the education mandate there, so there was around those sort of things, capability building, and then got a phone call one day from a mining company saying, do you want to come and work for us in community relations? And I said, I don't really know what that is, but it sounds like an adventure. And quickly learnt that the basis of that was making agreements, maintaining agreements, and keeping them in good standing as the bedrock for land access and land tenure for the business. And then how you did that was around social performance, or what became social performance. So community relations. So, and certainly in the 15 years I've been in the sector, the materiality and the way that that's been done has really evolved, and is something that is the mainstay now for the resources sector.
So that's quite a fascinating background. I think a really good advertisement for why at AusIMM, or case study at AusIMM, why we're so passionate about welcoming professionals from all parts of the industry ecosystem. So it's a fascinating background. Tell us a bit about your role at Oz Minerals. I think you were there for a decade, and very instrumental in terms of Carrapateena and the block cave expansion. Just tell us about, that was quite a formative project, I'd imagine, in terms of your career, quite a massive project from an industry context. Just tell us a bit about some of the challenges, or the project itself, and some of the challenges therein, if you could.
Yeah, so look, Oz Minerals was brilliant. It was a great place to work. Had a huge opportunity to be involved in many projects that got built. And seeing something from concept through to production, it's really important for my career, but also just in general, and learning how things work. So career at Oz Minerals is I started off working in production assets and exploration, so kind of had the bookends of that. So understood what making agreements at the beginning of a exploration process was, and then maintaining that for an operation. Then had the opportunity to work at the Carrapateena projects. And at that stage I was reporting to the Chief Operating Officer, because land access, the approvals and building that project on time, on budget was rate determining steps. So at that stage, and under Andrew Cole's leadership, we were prepared to do things differently. So we applied a partnering approach with the Native Title Group, the Cookatha Aboriginal Corporation and all the landowners. And we were able to work with people to build that project and design that project around. We understood what I've come to learn. We understood what the modifying factors were. We understand what the constraints were, and then we optimised design around those constraints, which meant that we eliminated rework. The project was built on time, on budget. And those learnings then transferred into a large-scale linear infrastructure. So we built a 270 kilometre power transmission line in 3 years. So from concept to energisation, integration into Brazil. So we acquired companies in Brazil. I was in a group role, so understand around sustainability and insurance and investors. And then my last role at Oz Minerals prior to the acquisition was the project director for the block cave, which was
big job.
A huge job,
big project,
and not being an engineer by trade, and I suppose that was part of it, is that understanding what the modifying factors were, to holistically manage the budget, the schedule to get the outcome, and understanding how it all fitted together. And I suppose part of that is by making land use agreements. One thing that I learned is that it's probably the only part of the project that is developed at the beginning for the life of the project. And it has to encapsulate all the needs of the project. So it's a kind of a mini MBA in learning out how to build a project.
Nice little plug on behalf of AusIMM is to let everyone out there know that we've just set up a tenement society.
Fantastic.
Which I think is going to be really important for all the points you're making, to actually bring together a community of professionals that's sort of a specialist in that area of land tenements, which is really great to hear. So I'd like to really do a bit of a deep dive around sort of social performance and community connection. Of course, this is something that's really integral to what AusIMM's all about, operating under a Royal Charter. I'd like to hear your reflections on the changes that you've seen in the industry over the, say, past decade around embracing ESG. Where do you kind of see that journey?
Yep.
And just a bit of a Dorothy Dixer, I guess, but why, from your perspective, is that so important that the industry in Australia demonstrates leadership when it comes to ESG?
Yeah. So a commodity sector, mineral sector, is globally competitive. At the moment, globally, I think it's around 17.8 years from first discovery to first production.
Yep. Is that getting longer, by the way? Or?
It is getting longer.
Yeah,
it's gone up. Yeah. So S&P Global have done a great piece of work on that.
Yeah.
And the piece that's extended the most is the studies and pre-approvals piece. Right. And I suppose that's the challenge, is that the law is a minimum standard, stakeholders' expectations fit within that. Projects, if by getting, so there's operational ESG, which AusIMM runs courses on, which is around project-specific development. So how do you support getting the approvals, the land access, the land tenure, and all the consents required to support a project, as well as creating shared value out of it, as well as the portfolio ESG, which is more about the external indices. But they are becoming the rate determining step with what's going on. And the opportunity to get it right means that the most technically optimal projects can be developed. Whereas if the focus is on the most technically feasible project without those situational constraints, we end up with write-downs and things take longer.
Here's kind of a hypothetical. Well, it's a question, I guess. So you were taught, you're in front of the board of a big mining company and they're starting off a new mining project.
Yep.
And they say to you, what are the three keys to getting this right, from the get-go? Like kind of what do we need to be mindful of? What do we need to be thinking about? Who do we need to connect with? What do we need to do differently than to try to bring that whole pre-approval piece a bit forward?
Yep. So great question. So you need to look at it holistically.
Right.
So understand the ore body, obviously, is a really big part of that, because that's going to inform a lot of the inputs and outputs. But define what the context is. So understand what all the modifying factors are in context.
Yes.
So if you're developing a mine in the tropics, in the desert, or a tundra of water's got a different connotation, all those things. And then design your project to have multiple pathways to delivery. And then after that, then optimize that based on the economics or things that go with it. So a lot of time work is done too early, potentially, before certain risks are removed. And ultimately, that's, whether you're looking at technical risks, social performance risks, regulatory risks, it's about reducing variance and those sort of things. So if you can design your project to systematically de-risk things as you go along, you have a faster pathway to delivery.
Okay. Maybe a bit of a change of gear to do a bit of a deep dive on that whole community connection area. Massive ongoing challenge for our industry to get communities at large, young people in particular, to understand why our industry is so important for the future. Just some sort of reflections from you, Geoff, around kind of some of the challenges and opportunities within that whole community engagement piece.
So information and understanding's a really, really important piece. People understanding, what mining methods are and how the process is undertaken is really, really important. The other piece around that is understanding the trade-offs that will happen as part of resource development with these sorts of things. So mineral development, exploration isn't mining. Exploration uses about 32% of the landmass, there's tenements, but it's only 0.09% for mining.
I've heard the analogy, less space taken up with mining operations in terms of physical impact on land than the car parks in pubs in this country.
I can't verify that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. And this is the challenges around some of these misnomer perceptions, is to say exploration is a precondition to mining, but it doesn't mean that it's going to happen there. And I think that's part of it. And understanding the process of mining is a challenge, because people think just because a drill hole is potentially going to happen, it's going to turn into a mine. So that's part of it. But part of it as well is that community perceptions of mining, as we just touched upon, exploration and mining takes a very long time. And then all of a sudden it goes from 0 to construction very quickly.
Yeah.
And managing those transitions is really difficult with what's going on because,
Can you think of other parts of the world where maybe that sort of time frame's a bit compressed, but they're still mining responsibly? Are there examples around the world where this has been done well?
Yeah, so excellent question. So in terms of European countries, Scandinavia, they've got very high regulatory regimes, much the same as Australia. But because the process is clear, consistent and trusted, the project proponents systematically work through it, and also then the people trust that the process is going to be there. And critically as well, if the process has worked and there's no material failures from environmental standpoints and legacy issues, people have a lived experience around how mining happens, and I think that's one of the challenges anywhere, is that people will judge a sector based on its historical precedent, and that's something that again, organisations like the AusIMM and CRC Time are doing a lot of work to make sure that things are set up properly.
So if you kind of were to then benchmark Australia when it comes to our ESG credentials in the mining industry with other mining jurisdictions around the world, where would we sit on that league ladder, you reckon, Geoff?
As a sector, we'd sit right up the top.
Okay.
So it's a safe jurisdiction. Our laws here are strong. Our processes are strong. But it is becoming more complex, and as we touched upon, the challenge for project proponents is how to make sense of all these different layers of expectations and requirements, because the more friction that's created, potentially the more cost, and then the challenges around that regulatory build-up impairing projects going forward.
And at our Critical Minerals Conference, which is where we are now, you delivered a presentation today, I think.
Yes.
Titled, which is an interesting title, Frankensteins and Fairy Tales Accelerating Discovery Delivery. I'm sure touching on, I didn't get to see it unfortunately, we've got a new Leaders Summit running concurrently. Just the headline view, is that along the lines of everything you've talked about today? Is there anything else that you kind of touched on there that's worth sharing with those watching the video today?
Look, the main points have been touched upon, but it's trying to frame Frankenstein projects are largely uncontrolled, piecemeal.
Got it.
And things will change. And Frankenstein projects are created, and then all of a sudden there's problems that go with it. But
I see. Got it.
There are lessons learned and opportunities. So in terms of a happily ever after outcome, in terms of fairy tale projects, there are projects that are designed properly, delivered properly, deliver the benefit for all communities, and all those things.
And did you, are there particular case studies that you talked about in your presentation that are exemplars when it comes to that?
So I touched upon, because of my lived experience, the Carrapateena mine. Again, that project was developed on time, on budget, no cultural heritage impacts. There was, record levels of local content there. No public comments were recorded as part of that. And also it allowed that project to proceed through to the next stage of the block cave, because there was a level of consideration about the future needs with what was going on. So
very good.
Might
just in closing, turn our attention a little bit to some of the work, excellent and much appreciated work you're doing with our online courses, facilitator of our ESG and Social Responsibility Professional Certificate, quite a mouthful, and also the Operationalising ESG course, which I think is a part of that overarching professional certificate. Tell us a little bit about kind of the course, if you could, and the work that you're doing, which we greatly appreciate.
So the course has been developed by practitioners for practitioners.
Got it.
So 6 modules, takes people through the life cycle of resources and how everything fits together. So it really is designed for people working in the field, or managers that are looking to understand this, is how do they design through a process outcomes and performance for their asset, rather than a whole overarching piece. It's very practically oriented, because again, social performance is asset level performance. It's for the asset, for the communities, for the government that you're working with at the time.
And sometimes kind of like as a sort of a systems concept, people say you've got to start with the end in mind.
Yes.
Is that kind of like
that? Is
absolutely,
sort of it absolutely is, because not every single project will proceed to a mine. But the reality is that it is a
Right.
process. There are common phases, common things happen.
Yep.
And if you look at the opportunity, and it's a big part of the Critical Minerals Conference, is
Yep.
around, post-closure life or
Yep.
other opportunities, post-mining,
Yep.
is that if that's not by design
Yeah.
integrated into the decision making as you're studying or even constructing processes, projects, it might be technically feasible, but it might not be economic to allow those things to happen. So
But that's really tricky, isn't it? Because I think that a bit of something we take for granted in our industry sometimes is the complexity and uncertainty that we deal with. It's why the role of the professionals that we represent is so important, because there's so much judgment that sits alongside the work that we do, which is sort of somewhat at odds with that sort of more systematic approach that you're describing. Kind of how do those kind of two concepts reconcile?
So it's excellent question. So if you look at where the trend of the resources sector is going, and this is delivered from Sustainable Minerals Institute, is their work on complex ore bodies. Is projects are becoming more complicated, so larger, bigger footprints at more depth, more technically challenging or more complex. So more environmental impacts.
Gotcha.
So how those things are brought together is becoming really, really important to be able to, and a system of making sense of those things is important. Now, the system might not give you the answer, but it'll make sure you ask the right questions at the right time to be able to proactively manage impacts that are highly consequential and irreversible. They're the ones that you really need to focus on.
Final two questions. One, back on AusIMM, a massive part of our mandate as an organisation and purpose is informed by the fact that we operate under a royal charter. Obviously a concept you're very familiar with. Is that kind of, for you, an important part of what drives your connection to AusIMM as an organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's core. The impartiality and making sure that everything's done under that charter to be able to build capacity, build resilience, and also support the industry by sharing knowledge is really, really important, because collectively that's how the industry is going to perform.
We're a very pure organisation, and that kind of point sometimes that it comes across the wrong way or it's not well understood, but the scientific know-how, the integrity, the concept of us bringing together a community of professionals to work together on behalf or to represent the views of the industry is really an important part of what we do. Final question, very, very deep one. The key to winning the hearts and minds of communities when it comes to the mining industry, please, Geoff, finish that sentence.
Is explaining how it works and explaining the process. If people can understand the process, they can understand what the impacts are going to be and how they can influence it. When people explain what the outcome's going to be, you take away people's agency to inform the process.
Lovely. Geoff Deans, been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Respect, admire the great commitment you have to our organisation, our industry. Been a fascinating journey going through that kind of career background and hearing your stories and your commitment to really making sure we better connect with communities. So thank you very much, and all the very, very best.
Thank you, Stephen. Pleasure.